So, with our discussion about all the different Robins up to the most prominent characters being completed, this means we can now finally jump back into Batman and the Court of Owls. Now, what we're going to do here is on DC Explained, we had the first few videos of Batman and the Court of Owls, but in truth, I didn't really like the way those videos came across. They came across kind of boring and mundane and sort of repetitive and monotone. So, I'm basically going to go back and just redo all these. So, for those of you guys who have seen those versions of Batman and the Court of Owls, bear with me for this first video. We're going to cover this whole series in 2 videos. And so bear with me here. You guys are probably going to see a lot of this stuff, but just keep in mind, this is more for the people who haven't seen it yet. But with that being said, let's jump straight into the story. Now, with Batman and the Court of Owls, what we find is that we pick up with Batman as he's quelling some kind of a conflict at Arkham Asylum. And so what we find is that as Batman is trying to quell this conflict, that he's actually joined by the Joker. Now, what's really cool here is that Batman and the Joker seemingly fight together, and this serves 2 purposes. The first is, of course, to basically help Batman to equal the odds against the amount of villains that he's fighting, but the other half is to demoralize these villains, because now, for them, the arch nemesis of Batman is fighting alongside Batman. So the question becomes, what hope do they really have to stop this conflict at all, to basically succeed in their uprising? And so once these criminals are demoralized, they're effectively sent back to their places in Arkham Asylum, and things, as best as they can be, go back to some measure of peace here. But what we find when we jump back to Wayne Manor is that this is not, in fact, the Joker, that this is actually Dick Grayson. Now, this was a huge moment for a lot of Batman fans, and the reason why was because a lot of people looked at this as though it was possible the Joker was going to be making his debut in the New 52 Batman as part of Court of Owls. This is really just more of a teaser on behalf of Scott Snyder to basically tell us, yes, the Joker is still a part of Batman continuity. Yes, he will show up eventually. He's just not here right now. And so what we do is we transition with Batman and Tim Drake and Damian Wayne and Dick Grayson as they're getting ready for some kind of ball. Because keep in mind, during this time with Batman and the Court of Owls, this is after Batman has already come to meet Damian Wayne when he's fighting alongside his Robin, but it's already after Tim Drake and Dick Grayson have been Robin. It's kind of this in-between period here. And so what we do is we pick up with Bruce Wayne, and he's basically outlining his plans for what it is that he wants to do with Gotham City. And this is really kind of a cool concept here, because what I think this does is really tie into Batman as Bruce Wayne in terms of how Bruce Wayne is just as effective in helping Gotham when he's himself as opposed to when he's Batman. But Batman also does the same thing too, but in his own way. But nonetheless, what Bruce Wayne basically says is that Gotham is his home, that with Gotham being his home, that he's just as aware of it as anybody else of the kind of things that have been seen here. And what he does is he really sort of ties in, he really sort of cites these articles that are being written in the Gotham magazine or the Gotham newspaper. And what he says is that in these articles, they have a section called Gotham Is, whereby different people can write in and they can talk about what Gotham is. And he basically uses this to say, for him, Gotham is a place where people should be able to call the city home, but do it in a safe place. It's a place whereby those who are poorer, those who are unable to make it due to, smaller financial means, should still be able to succeed. And so what he does here is he basically lays out a plan and saying that what he wants to do is, improve on the existing skyline of Gotham City, but he also wants to give money to the poorer neighborhoods, to give money to the neighborhoods that are going to basically revitalize the city. And he's letting everybody at this ball know that he wants them to chip in as well. And so what happens is that we transition to Bruce Wayne meeting with a man named Lincoln March. Now, Lincoln March is a supremely important character in Batman Court of Owls, and we'll actually find out at the end of Court of Owls and Night of Owls just how important Lincoln March is. But the idea here is that Lincoln March is currently running for mayor of Gotham City, and so basically what happens is that when the two of them are introduced to each other by virtue of Vicky Vale, that they sort of begin to make plans and talk about how they're going to get together to have lunch or breakfast or something like that, and basically see what Bruce Wayne can do to help to contribute to the campaign of Lincoln March if what Lincoln March wants to do falls in line with the kind of ideologies that Bruce Wayne has. But in the midst of this conversation between Bruce Wayne and Lincoln March, Bruce Wayne realizes that Commissioner Gordon seems to be very tied up in a phone call and overhears him saying things like stab wounds and so on. And so what happens is Bruce Wayne detaches himself from Lincoln March and Vicky Vale. He dons his Batman outfit and he goes to investigate. And this is when we really get into this sort of whodunit mystery with regards to the Court of Owls conflict, where we find that some man, some unidentified person, has has basically been made to stand up, and it has a multitude of puncture wounds with these small little knives. And these little knives, as they're examined by Batman, have an owl on the, I guess, on the hilt of them, indicating that the possibility exists that the legend of the Court of Owls is true. Now, this is something that Batman doesn't really buy in, and in fact, we'll find up until about the end of this video that Batman staunchly believes the Court of Owls doesn't exist, and we'll actually find out why he doesn't believe that. But again, what happens here is that Batman takes this time alongside Harvey Bullock to continue examining this, to continue trying to find out about this, to figure out what in the world is going on. But what Batman also realizes is that there's some sort of flammable chemical that's been used here on the wall. And so what he does is he lights the chemical on fire, and when he sees the chemical burning, it spells out the words, "Bruce Wayne will die." And so this is a very ominous thing for Bruce Wayne, because the question becomes, why would this man write this? And then in turn, why would he die? And so again, this leaves a lot of unanswered questions. And so what we do is we find Bruce Wayne traveling back to Wayne Manor to try to continue deciphering this even further. Now, one of the other really interesting concepts here, and this was really a way for Scott Snyder to sort of make the plot thicker, was that when Batman was analyzing the body of this man, he of course has collected some evidence with regards to scar tissue the man had, some skin under his fingernails. And once he had sent this off to Alfred had basically verified that the DNA belonged to Dick Grayson. And so the question was, why is Dick Grayson tied into this? More specifically, is it possible Dick Grayson had killed this man? And so what we do is we jump to Batman as he's, I guess, assisting to analyze this corpse alongside Commissioner Gordon. Now, the way this is done, Batman has basically installed a device in the morgue that will allow him to analyze the body as he's in the Batcave. And so while he's speaking with Commissioner Gordon, we get a little more information about this man, in the sense that this man had always paid his rent in cash. This man has no identity in terms of DNA matches in federal or state databases. As far as we can tell, this man doesn't exist. What Batman also tells us is this man has various scarring around his arms and so on, indicating he was involved in swordplay of some kind. And so what Batman does as he continues to analyze this is he finds some kind of artifact on the man's tooth. And as he analyzes it, he realizes that it's a filling, but that it has a symbol of an owl. And what this does is it tips Commissioner Gordon off, and Commissioner Gordon begins to give us some information about the Court of Owls. And what we learn is that with the Court of Owls, this is supposedly some kind of shady group that has been existing within Gotham City for hundreds of years. And there's even nursery rhymes based on the Court of Owls, in the sense that those individuals who know about the Court of Owls would most likely be sent I guess, after by the Talon, who would presumably kill these people if they were to ever talk about the Court of Owls. But again, these are really just sort of childhood nursery rhymes that Batman doesn't put any stock into. And this, for me, is a very big moment for Batman, because what it tells us is that Batman perceives that he knows everything about Gotham City. There's nothing he doesn't know. And I would go as far as to say, despite his intellect, despite his capabilities, this is a very incredible demonstration of arrogance about Batman, to say that there's nothing in the city he's unaware of. But as we'll learn, that he's very much wrong in this endeavor. And so what happens is that as Batman is analyzing this body, he's joined by Dick Grayson. And Batman begins to ask Dick Grayson why it is this man had Dick Grayson's skin under his fingernails. And what Dick Grayson does is he tells us exactly what had taken place with this man, that for some reason or another, that this man had basically contacted Dick Grayson, that in fact he had basically grabbed Dick Grayson, and that while Dick Grayson and this man were scuffling with one another, the security had pulled this man away, but in the process the man had scratched Dick Grayson, and as a result this was how the skin of Dick Grayson ended up under this man's fingernails. But in addition to this man had also began uttering things like "they are coming" and so on, indicating that some group is coming after Dick Grayson, but Dick Grayson really has no idea who this group is or why this group would be doing that. And so what we do here is we see that as Batman begins to conclude this investigation with this corpse, as he begins to conclude this investigation with both Dick Grayson and Jim Gordon, that we see that we switch to the old Wayne Manor building. And again, what we find is that Bruce Wayne is continuing to meet with Lincoln March here. And it seems as though what it is that Lincoln March is spitting to Bruce Wayne, what it is that he's saying to Bruce Wayne, is very, very enticing, in the sense that his ideologies are almost in line with Bruce Wayne, that Gotham has been failing for quite some time. It's really been sinking into a cesspool. And so as a result, what he wants to do is basically help Bruce Wayne revitalize Gotham. And so what Bruce Wayne does is he tells Lincoln March that if he has the support of Bruce Wayne, that in the end, he'll gain the support of a multitude of other people who can contribute financially to his campaign and almost guarantee his position as mayor. But what we also do is we see Lincoln March beginning to identify with Bruce Wayne. And this is very, very important. I'd like you guys to keep this in the back of your head, because what we'll find is that this segment will actually tie in much later on in the Court of Night of Owls and give us an idea of what's been going on with Lincoln March. But what Lincoln says is that he, in a lot of ways, can identify directly with Bruce Wayne, in the sense that Bruce Wayne had lost his parents at a very young age, and that Lincoln March had as well. But Lincoln March focuses more on his mother than anything else. And what he says is that he doesn't remember a whole lot about her. He doesn't recall a whole lot about her things, and he really can't even remember her face anymore. But more so than that, the one thing that he can remember is a pin, that she had this sort of heart-shaped pin, and that she always wore it, and that when the accident had occurred that led to his mother dying, that as he was being taken away, that he remembered looking back and seeing the pin, that there was no injury on this pin, there was nothing wrong with this pin. And this, again, is a very important concept that I'd like you to keep in mind. But as the two of them are talking, as the two of them are conversing, we find that Batman and Lincoln March, or I guess Bruce Wayne and Lincoln March, are ambushed by some individual who's dressed up in some kind of assassin gear and looks very much like an owl. And so what happens is that Lincoln March is attacked by this man. He's assaulted with a dagger of sorts, and then the man goes after Bruce Wayne, telling him that he's been sentenced to die by the Court of Owls. And so what happens is, as Bruce Wayne and the Talon are fighting, that the Talon attacks Bruce Wayne, and Bruce Wayne is knocked out of Wayne Tower from the height of the building. And so as the two of them are falling down, the two of them continue to fight with one another, and Bruce Wayne begins to give us this monologue and telling us that as the two of them are going at it, that when the tower was built, that there were different statues built around the tower itself at the top, which were designed to serve a couple purposes, some of them superstitional and some of them practical. But one of the purposes, or I guess one of these things, were designed in such a way to where it was lowered down from the others. And so what happens is Bruce Wayne lands on this 13th Guardian, as he defines it, and this individual, who presumably is the Talon, falls presumably to his death and lands on a car. Now from here, what we do is we jump to a little bit of history with regards to Gotham City, more specifically with the Waynes. And what we do is we pick up with a man named Allan Wayne. And Allan Wayne is, again, sort of running for his life and seems to have lost his mind entirely, in the sense that back in this time in 1922, in a very early Gotham, he runs into the police and is rambling on about how there are, I guess, owls that are coming after him, about how the 13th hour is near, indicating that the end of his life is coming. And so what happens is that while the police are trying to figure out what to do with him, their initial idea is that perhaps they should take him in, perhaps they should inform somebody of what it is that's going on, to take him downtown, basically. But the idea here is that if they take Allan Wayne downtown, the most prominent member in Gotham at the time, and if they somehow label him as being an insane person, this in turn will basically, I guess, tarnish the name of Gotham, or tarnish the name of the Waynes, and in turn possibly ruin the career of the police. And so again, as they're continuing to discuss this, we find that Allan Wayne simply just vanishes into a sewer. We have no real idea what had happened to him or where it is that he had gone. In addition, we pick up with Batman once he gets back to Wayne Manor and begins conversing with Alfred. And what happens as the two of them are talking is they begin to get into a discussion about the Court of Owls. And what Batman says here is that this person who attacked him seems to be operating under the alias of the Talon, which again seems to be, as far as Alfred or Batman is concerned, a way for this person to sort of instill fear by stealing the moniker of the Talon. And so what Alfred does is he gives us some explanation about Allan Wayne. He tells us about what it is that had happened over the course of his life, in the sense that when Allan Wayne had grown older over his life, he had become obsessed with the idea of owls, and had become obsessed with the idea that the owls were roosting in various buildings, and they had been roosting in the home of Allan Wayne. And so while people had considered Allan Wayne to be entirely insane, in the current time, Batman thinks there may have been some legitimacy to this, but he also sort of, I guess, dispels this idea and the fact that as far as he's concerned, again, there really is no Court of Owls. There's really no way this Court of Owls could exist here. And so what happens is we pick up with Bruce Wayne as he is again donned this outfit of Batman, and he gives us some really cool insight here. And what he tells us is that the idea of the number 13 was considered to be a prominent part of Allan Wayne's life. He was a very superstitious person. And so when the buildings of Gotham were built, they were built in such a way to where, as far as the superstition of the number 13 goes, that a small space of sorts, just small enough to basically house a single apartment, was built between the 12th and the 14th floors. And the way this was designed to do, or I guess what this was designed to do, was to basically house the bad luck of number 13 within this small space, so it couldn't actually spread out to anybody else. And so what he does is he lands in one of the buildings and he cuts open a hole on the 14th floor. And when he falls through, he ends up in the small section of the 13th floor, and he finds what appears to be all these different things which belong to the Talon or somebody who is identifying this outfit. But what he also finds is what appears to be a portrait dating all the way back to 1891 of the Court of Owls. And so what he does is he contacts Alfred and he asks him about all the buildings that have been improved upon using the fund that was established in Allan Wayne's name. And so once he gets this list of buildings, he begins going through all of them, and every single building that has any kind of a storage space for the 13th floor, instead of being just an empty vacant spot, houses all these different artifacts and all these different items involving the Court of Owls. And so what happens is that as Batman is investigating this last place, the place that was established in 2006, which presumably has the Talon in his most recent form, we find that there's some kind of an explosion, and in the presumed chaos, Batman seems to have been killed. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring this video to an end. Kind of a crazy cliffhanger to leave it on, but we're going to go ahead and bring it to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, let me know, and I will catch you guys later. Peace. Be sure to follow me on Twitter. There you can keep up with all the updates from Comics Explained and talk to me directly. I can't